It being 5:15 and I call the September Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. Please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any changes to the agenda?
Yes, I would like to move item 6 to item 7 and item 7 to item 6. So we'll go ahead and do the health insurance presentation prior to the discussion on personal property, because that is running a little late. So
Can I get a motion?
Make a motion.
Motion made by Bob, seconded by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. The approval of the July 3rd meeting minutes.
Make the motion.
August 7th?
oh yeah, I have the wrong one there. That's my fault. It's the August 7th.
Oh, sorry, August 7th meeting minutes.
I make that motion. Second.
Motion made by Bob, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to public comment. Seeing none. On to presentation of the solicitor's license. Nicole?
Thank you. What you have before you is some changes to the process for applying for solicitor's license. Basically, it's before you because what we have existing is a little bit antiquated. And just from feedback that we're hearing from residents that are applying for these licenses, and the process that the clerk's office and the police use to do these background checks. The proposed changes include, removing some of the information that we don't necessarily need for a background check. We don't want to photograph a physician's statement, things like that. One requirement that the city had was requesting a surety bond from any vendors that were outside of Outagamie or Waupaca counties. Attorney Steckbauer was agreeable to removing this requirement. It was kind of cumbersome for people who lived in Menasha, because they lived in Winnebago County, they'd have to get this thing over from their insurance agent just to be able to sell in the city. One of the bigger changes before you is not having special events require that each vendor at the event apply for their own solicitor's license. As long as that special event is being hosted by a bona fide nonprofit and that nonprofit submits a list of vendors at least 15 days prior to the event. So I guess the rationale behind having a solicitor's license, I think, was that we want to be able to know who's selling to people in the city. So if these bona fide nonprofits are able to give us a list of these people and their contact information, then it's really satisfying that, that need that the solicitor's license was having. So this would be like big events like Fall Fest or May Fest, where those nonprofits would just give us a list of everyone who's there instead of everybody that has a booth or that's applying for a license. And one suggestion that came out of the conversations about solicitor's license when we were talking with Attorney Steckbauer was maybe not having businesses that have a brick and mortar in the city, having them have to have a solicitor's license. So if El Tequila has a taco truck, they wouldn't also have to get a solicitor's license because they're already, paying taxes in the city. And as far as if we, something happened and we needed to track them down, we know where they are. They're not, fly by night coming into the community and selling their wares or whatever. And this kind of came about because of, the farmer's market. People were, as it stands, they were needing to have a solicitor's permit to sell at the farmer's market when they could just walk into the store and sell in the store. So, there was some pushback, like, why do these people need to get a license to sell, just because they're selling outside? So that, that's up for consideration too. So these door-to-door sales people would still need to have a license. And food trucks that are, based, their business or restaurant or home is based outside of the city of New London, they would still need to have a solicitor's permit. And then the cost, I'm proposing a cost of increase of $50 rather than $35. Just because that's more in line with what some other communities are charging. In your packets, I shared information on what like Clintonville and Appleton is charging, and it's considerably less than what Appleton would be charging. And I'm obviously not married to any of these changes. If there's anything that you guys don't like, or we can work with that.
Questions?
I have a question for you. How
Yeah,
long are them licenses good for when they take them out?
1 year. Yeah. And we basically have a lot of people that don't have them. So it'd be nice to, get the rules down and then to start enforcing a little bit better. The police department has tasked somebody on their staff to start enforcing this a little bit better, because we do have, food trucks that don't have permits, or people selling door to door that don't have a permit. So, but they are good for a year. Yeah.
I'm assuming that like food trucks need to have some kind of insurance or something, right?
Not through us. I mean, the only thing that we're saying is that they need to have, the solicitor's license that tells us who they are. If anything sanitation wise would be through the county. But we don't enforce that. We don't, check them for health. We don't check the temperature of their meat or anything like that, like they do in some of the bigger cities that have a health department.
And it's no different, John, that we don't require a business in the downtown to have a certain insurance, a brick and mortar. I mean, that's not our thing. We don't require that. So to require it out of somebody else, we would have to turn around and require it for everyone, which.
So really the county, the people that do kitchens and stuff, that's their thing. And
Yep, health department.
yeah, just so you have a record of that. Like I can see the solicitor, because if somebody, you gotta track somebody down, there was an issue or something, or for police matters or.
Right. So we basically don't want like pedophiles selling toys at the
Cotton candy.
parade.
Yeah.
We want to be able to find, if they've swindled an old lady, we want to be able to like find them. And if there was food issues, we would have the contact information for everybody that was selling food, that we could aid the health department, but we're not the ones, enforcing that or doing that. But we would have that information at
We
the
don't-
ready, I guess, for police or sanitation.
We're not liable for any weights and measures stuff on.
If they need a weights and measures license, like Bacos Produce does have a weights and measures license. So if they're using a scale, they are supposed to have a license through weights and measures. So
Seal or something,
yeah,
like you see on the city's got a seal on gas pumps.
right. So anytime they have a scale or a scanner, that does have to be checked by, we use a consortium for weights and measures through the city of Appleton, and they would come and check that.
Any other questions? Is there a motion?
I would make a motion that we approve the solicitor's license amendments. A second.
Motion been made by Bob, seconded by John. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. On to a discussion of going from 2-year to 4-year term for alderpersons / mayor. Chad?
So I'll kick this off. Alderperson Migalski reached out and requested that this be placed on a future agenda. So to kind of consider looking at changing the terms for the mayor and alderpersons from 2 years to 4 years. So the first thing I did was reach out to Attorney Stegbauer, just kind of get some background information on that to see is it regulated by state statute that you can or cannot change the term length. He reached back out and referenced a website from the League of Wisconsin Municipalities. Obviously, this is something that the league has answered in the past, but talked about does a city or village change the term, or how does a city or village change a term for members of the governing body? And basically that you can change the term for limits for the governing body members by using a charter ordinance, and then it references the state statutes on that website. So yes, it is something that you can do. It'd be a matter of, if you're interested in that, we would have to create a charter ordinance and then bring that back for consideration that you and then the council as a whole would approve. Just a little FYI with that, it wouldn't change your existing term. So whatever your term, your 2 years term right now, you wouldn't jump and extend it to a 4-year term. If you change this ordinance, the next time you're elected, that would be the start of your new, if you change it, 4-year term. So just like changing the wages of an alderperson, you can't change your own term, your own wages. You would be changing the term for whoever's elected into that next role, if it's yourself or somebody else. So with that said, I don't know, Charlene, if you want to add in a little bit, but kind of pick it off.
Yeah, I had brought that up. I mentioned 3 or 4 years because I don't think 2 years is enough. You don't learn everything in 2 years. There's too much stuff to learn. That's how I feel. And I think if you'd have a little longer, you'd be better.
Is it okay if I talk?
Mhm.
I did just inquire with the county clerk if it had any effect on elections. So if you were thinking of doing this, it would be best practice to do it before papers were circulated on December 1st. And she and I spoke, there wouldn't be anything on their end. We would just have to get the new terms, this charter ordinance, to Wisconsin Election Commission prior to that December 1 date to change, the election plan, which it wouldn't be hard to do. Charter ordinances do need 2/3 majority, so you are looking at that if you are doing a charter ordinance. And then it also would not change the number of elections needed, because our school board has staggered. They have 3-year terms, but they have that staggered. So they have 6 members on the school board, and it changed. There's only 2 people up for election every year. So if you did this, it wouldn't save you any money of having any less elections in the spring, just so you know that.
What do you think?
I have to agree with Charlene. I think it'd be a good idea, because the newly elected people, a 2-year term, there's no way you're gonna, learn most of the stuff you have to learn. And by the time the 1.5 years up, you're already thinking about having to take out papers and stuff again. So to me, I think 4 years or even 3 would be real good. And I also have to bring up, I know when all these people take out their nomination papers, there's a line of people stretching around the block just waiting to get in here to take them out, so.
I prefer the 2-year term. I think 4 years is long. I mean, It's not like they're beating down the doors. Run again and learn just as much. If you get somebody in here that's completely useless, I'm stuck with it for 4 years instead of 2.
I agree with Dave. I think 2 years is fine. If you don't learn it in 2 years, then you run for every election, learn the next 2 years. So I don't know, that's how I feel about it.
I think it'd be different if it would save us an election, you know, if it save money, I could see it, but even then. If you elect the wrong person or something goes wrong. A lot can happen in 4 years without turning over this board. A lot of people could run amok. Not saying we're gonna, but it could.
And if you got people are moving into different districts, then you got another problem there too. So you're gonna have to appoint somebody to fill out the term of the other person if he moves someplace else in town. Change districts.
It's kind of a big commitment too.
Yeah.
Somebody that, you know, this is all a part-time job. It's not a full-time job like the governor, or president or whatever. I mean, so somebody gets in and they're like, oh man, 4 years, that's a long time to be on council. You know, I don't think I'm gonna run because I don't want that kind of commitment. I think 2 years is, like you said, if you get done with the 2 and you wanna go again, then do another 2. But
I agree that I think 4 years is too much. But I also see Charlene's point that 2 years doesn't seem to be quite enough. When you're looking at coming in with a fresh perspective and trying to learn. And I've always applied this towards any job or any training that I've done. The first year you are just scrambling to figure out what you're supposed to be doing. The second year, you know what you're supposed to be doing and you're keeping up. And it's not until the third year that you really feel like you could be proactive and get ahead of what you need to be doing. That's always been my thought process in it. But I don't hate the 2 years and having to go collect the signatures. It's not like we're having to collect 1,000 signatures. It's 30. You know, so
it also gives you that chance to get out in the community and talk to your constituents when you have to
it
get
does.
signatures every 2 years.
It does. Yeah, and they get to see your face a little bit more. But I think 4 years is too much. I would not be opposed to 3 and I'm fine with 2.
I agree with Belinda. I mean, I looked at national average. I tried to kind of look at it from all different perspectives. It was from a grouping of all cities in the United States. And the mayors, they're 55% of the mayor terms are 4 years. What do we got, 2 or 3? And there was quite a few cities. I was surprised with 4 years because I thought 4 is a lot, 3 a definite, but I know what Charlene's saying when you're first elected, you know, getting to learn the ropes and everything, but districts change. And like Tim says, you want to encourage people to get out there and talk. So I can see. The one thing I didn't think about though is Dave brought up, what if you get somebody that's just a real tank in there that's counterproductive to anything? And what is the process for the council if that happens? Does I know that, I don't know if this council's ever censured, but I think seen it in school districts or whatever, or when somebody, well, what is the process of somebody outside of, say, it's not a criminal violation, but say somebody repeatedly leaks closed session information or something, what's the process for? You have to wait 2 years till that person's up for re-election, or is there a process to remove somebody that's, you know, what does it take to remove one of us?
I'm
I don't
sure
know
there's
that
a
question.
process to remove somebody if you had to. Sure, there's one out there, but
We can look that up. Luckily, it's not something we deal with every day.
Right, right. But I mean, you know, that was one of my concerns with, boy, what a 4-year term. What if this person just is a professional bridge burner, you know?
I don't know what the process is. I don't know what the process is, but I do know that Green Bay had an issue a few years ago And the process to get that person removed did not happen. So it ended up being an election issue, and they ran people hard against that person. So, I mean, it does turn into an election issue. So if we had something like that, it would probably end up being, if we had a 4-year term, it could end up being bad. I think with a 2-year term or a 3-year term, it wouldn't be as heavy a weight. That 4-year just seems heavy. Although I think that now that thinking about it from the perspective of the mayor, I almost feel like that needs to be a longer process. At least 3 years for the mayor.
I feel they should both be the same.
I wouldn't disagree with that, but I really look at the mayoral position as having a lot more weight in our community with a lot more duties and a lot more things that need to, they need to get under their belt and figure out. And I think that process, that person should be given the time to do that job and not have to fight for it like right away. And that's just, outside looking in it.
I think having 2 years also, it gives you the opportunity to, hey, they got a real stinker in there, let's get somebody else. You get more opportunity to vote somebody else in, you're not stuck with them for 4 years.
We could end up with the same scenario, Meryl. I agree with that.
I think
Y'all making me lean more towards 3 years now.
I think the only way we can get rid of somebody now, according to our rules, is if he misses so many meetings in a row. I believe there's something in our procedure that if he misses so many meetings, he can be removed. I think that's the only way we have right now.
My opinion is if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I have to agree too. I mean, 4 years does get to be a long time. Somebody might get in here and after 2 years, don't want it. If they were here and either we gotta appoint somebody. If they decide to leave, so. I agree.
So I guess at this point, if there's any action that somebody wants to take or not.
I'd like to see how many would go for 3 years instead of the 2.
I guess I would be all right with 3 years, but I'm not opposed to 2. I'm opposed to 4.
Nicole, I think we'd have to sit down and figure out how that would stagger out.
Yeah, I know.
I was gonna say, could you guys come back next month with what 3 years would do? Cause that's an odd number. And
So
not sure.
the school board does 3, but they're a 6-member board. You have 10 members here and you have 2 from each district. So that,
Doesn't compute.
I don't know. I mean, I could definitely put something together. If you're.
Is there enough
motion
interest
is
to go to
for
3? I
three-
mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's.
there's not enough interest. I don't wanna waste Nicole's time.
To make it work out, you'd almost have to go to like a 6-district scenario in the city, which no, we don't. But I
Yeah.
mean, to get that to work out, with an odd number, with an even number of districts. We can crunch some scenarios and see what it
I
looks
don't wanna
like.
waste the time for the city if there's not enough people even interested in doing 3. So I guess,
Take a hand,
show of hands, I mean, I'm good with
Mayor
2.
is one thing. I
Yep.
mean, mayor would be real easy to change. But you're gonna have to get 2/3 of a vote to pass because it's a charter ordinance.
Say we just do a show of hands, Dave. I waste time if it's not on the.
Show of hands of who wants to see what it would look like for 3 years.
What are we doing?
Would you want to see what it looks like at 3 years?
If, I don't know if it'd even be possible, but yeah. Don't spend 40 hours on it though.
I'll just find somebody else who's done it before. I won't spend 40 hours.
And it's weird too, cause when I was looking it up today, I didn't see any. I was thinking 3s, I didn't see any 3s.
Finance committee only
Yeah.
for something like this, I don't. I'm asking.
Should be what is here. About 4.
Either way, it's not.
right with only having 4, say they wanted to even look at it, we're just gonna leave it at 2 years. We're on to number 6, health insurance presentation. Judy,
Alright.
Jamie,
So, Jamie Gilson is making her way up. Jamie is our health insurance consultant. And she worked diligently, with one of her colleagues, Terry, in her office, to put together the information that she will be sharing with you tonight. I don't want to go too far into anything. I want her to be able to present those findings to you and be able to take some credit for where credit is due. So I think you will be happy to see the hard work that her and Terry have put into this, and it will show in her presentation tonight. So with that, Jamie,
Should work.
if you wanna, do you have a clicker?
I have a clicker, yes. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for your time and attention. I really appreciate it. Just to kind of brief you on the current situation, our Robin Health Partners renewal came in with a 9.9% increase based upon utilization. I was able to get that negotiated down to a 0%, but our utilization this year was at 120%, meaning for every dollar paid in premiums, Robin was paying out $1.20 in claims. So we did our due diligence, we did a full market analysis. In that, we found that Network Health Plan came in slightly below our renewal with both the POS and HMO plans. But we were able to find a very competitive offer from United Healthcare. So they had multiple plan options with a significant cost savings up to 24.5% below current costs. So with that, given that our loss ratio is at 120%, we found that it was very imperative to put in a focus on preventative care moving forward. So with that, what we would like to do is put an incentivized PCP engagement incentive in place. So for anyone who does not have their routine maintenance preventative exam, as well as their age and gender appropriate screenings, they would not get the full HSA contribution. It would be subtracted off by $500 if they did not do those routine preventative exams as they should. And then as far as Delta Dental, our dental came in with a 2% increase based upon utilization, and our vision with Delta Dental came in with no change in premiums. So moving on to the medical specifically, we are proposing that we move forward with United Healthcare. By doing so, United Healthcare does provide the opportunity for all employees to have the same medical network, which is the Choice Plus network, which is United Healthcare's most expansive network nationwide, with a choice of deductible options. So the employees are able to choose a deductible that makes most sense for them and their families. So we are looking at 2 plan options. The first would be a $3,200 deductible for a single, $6,400 for a family. This is an HSA compliant plan. Our plan that we currently have in place is a $3,000 deductible for a single, $6,000 for a family. Where the differential comes in there is that there has been an increase in what the IRS deems as being the minimum deductible in order to be IRS compliant, to be a high deductible health plan. So the minimum for 2024 is at the $3,200 for a single, $6,400 for a family. So that's why we are seeing that little increase in the deductible. As far as the network, it includes ThedaCare, Ascension, Aurora, Bellin, also Froedtert and Children's Hospital with national coverage. So you can see the provider search is listed here at uhc.com to find the doctor. Then we're also going to be offering that as a dual choice option, proposing to do so with a higher deductible plan, if that makes more sense for their families, with a $5,000 deductible for a single, $10,000 for a family. Same provider network between the 2 plans offered. As I mentioned, it's just a change in the deductible between those 2 plan options. So here's the actual breakdown in the plan. We'll start in that middle column. So it's a $3,200 deductible for a single, $6,400 for a family. Once you hit that deductible, the co-insurance kicks in at 100%, meaning United Healthcare pays 100%. So your out-of-pocket maximum is $3,200 for a single, $6,400 for a family. Routine preventative care is covered at 100%. And then everything else you see listed, so labs, x-rays, radiology, inpatient, outpatient, emergency room, all would be covered at 100% after your deductible has been met. Moving on to the plan on the right, this is a little higher deductible plan. So this is a $5,000 deductible for a single, $10,000 for a family. Once again, this is also an HSA compatible plan. And then once you hit that deductible, the co-insurance kicks in at 100%, meaning UHC pays 100% up to that out-of-pocket maximum at $5,000 for a single, $10,000 for a family. Routine preventative care is also covered at 100% here as well. And then you see everything else listed, your labs, x-rays, radiology, inpatient, outpatient, and emergency room would be covered at 100% after your deductible has been met. And then as far as prescription drugs, since it is an HSA compatible plan, everything is covered at 100% on both plans after your deductible has been satisfied. And then here's the breakdown on the contributions. So you can see our 2023, 2024 contributions versus 2024 and 2025 with the same network across all plan options. The high plan represents the lower deductible of the two plans. The low plan represents the $5,000 HSA compatible plan. So it is a cost reduction across the board for the city, for all employees. And then moving on to HSA contributions. So the city has decided, is proposing to increase the HSA contribution from $1,500 for a single and $3,000 for a family to $1,700 for a single, $3,400 for a family to make up for that increased $200, $400 deductible due to that minimum IRS regulation in order to be HSA compliant. So we are proposing here, you can see the $3,200, $6,400 plan. The single contribution would be $1,700 with that PCP preventative care in place. And then the family contribution for an HSA would be at $3,400 with the preventative care. If you happen to elect that higher deductible plan, that HSA contribution would bump up accordingly. So $2,700 for a single with that PCP preventative care in place. And for a family, $5,400 with that PCP preventative care in place. Now, we do understand that some people are having a hard time getting in to see a PCP. So given this, we would communicate this to the employees this year with that $500 deduction coming off of that HSA that would come in place in 2025.
So I think right here, we should talk about the $500 HSA contribution that the city would be looking at actually incentivizing employees if they were to go to it's a preferred, what is a PCP? What
Primary care
there you
physician.
go. So we have found out through actually Jamie, whose company does a lot of research, and within our community of employees here at the city and the utility. So just, you know, this is both the city and the utility under this plan. We have found that there are a number of individuals in our community that do not go to the doctor at all. So to help get that relationship started, what we would like to do is incentivize employees, because what they have found through time is that when employees engage their physician, they can find out things that are happening ahead of time, and that doesn't explode into such large claims. So, and we know what drives our dollars in our health insurance is claims. So if we can get these employees that currently don't engage a physician at all to go see a physician, and there's been a lot of research on what that dollar amount looks like, and the bottom is $500. So if you don't pay them $500, you're not going to get them to go. So we have decided to incentivize and see how this works for us. And moving into 2025, we thought about doing it this year, but as you know, if you call a doctor, there's a lot of times, and sometimes you're working in October, you can't see them till January. So we don't want to dishearten anyone through the process either. So we would like to look at this incentive based on 2025, but still letting them know you have, 13, 14 months now to get that connection with your doctor. And then you would be incentivized in 2025.
Or 2026, right?
You're correct,
Yep.
26. in 2026, for seeing a doctor in 2025, 2024, yet here too. So working through that change within this process. And again, just because we know what drives our cost here at the city is claims. And if we can get people in and they find out you have diabetes or whatever that medical condition may be, that they can get it taken care of when they're at the beginning of the state and not at the end of the state. And can get it corrected to start with. So I just wanted to talk about that a little bit.
So Judy did a really great job recapping this slide, and this kind of explains the why behind preventative care and why it is so important. So we know that it is so important to maintain good health as well as to manage our healthcare spending moving forward. As I mentioned, routine preventative care is covered at 100% on both of those two plan options. And the shocking statistic is that 70% of the population does not have an active primary care relationship. As we've seen in our utilization data here, that people simply are not going in even for their routine preventative exams. And we do know how important that is to make sure that we're catching things early before they turn into more serious chronic conditions, because ultimately it's up to all of us to help curb our healthcare spending down the road as well, and to ultimately keep all of us healthier is the main goal. So if we look at the next slide, we look at cancer care specifically. So I'll focus here based on the audience. We'll look at colon cancer. So if we look at the cost of colorectal screenings, it's at $925 compared to the average cost to treat colon cancer, anywhere between $40,000 to $80,000. If this is caught early at stage 1, the survival rate's approximately 91%. If caught late at stage 4, it goes all the way down to 14%. So this is once again recapping, looking at some of those preventable cancers, why routine preventative care is so imperative to helping us manage our costs long term, as well as to help the livelihood of us all and keep us healthy. Moving on to dental. Dental will remain with Delta Dental. They did come in. We'll have no plan design changes here proposed. There was a slight increase in the rates by 2% based upon trend and utilization for both the city and utilities. And then moving on to vision with Delta Dental as well. No change in the benefit plan design, as well as no change in the rates for the upcoming year. Just a reminder, from an enrollment communication support standpoint, we will continue to message with the employees that they do have access to the mobile app through USI, so they can have all of their benefit information in the palm of their hand, as well as for their dependents, which can be very beneficial. That site also does house open enrollment presentations, any SBCs, any materials that we want to communicate with the employees. It's right there easily for them to access. And then just a reminder that they all do have access to the Benefit Resource Center. So this is our concierge service available to all the employees for any benefit questions they may have, any claims questions, if they happen to have to go through the appeal process. This is a really nice service that walks them through all of those pieces as well. So there's a little more hand holding there. And then if we have anyone that is approaching that Medicare age, we know that it can be a very stressful time and intimidating as well. So we do have Medicare resources available to anyone that would need some guidance, actually comparing your current group plan that you have in place to some potential Medicare options that are available as well. So once again, a very nice additional resource for your employees to kind of walk them through those stressful insurance decisions that they may have to make in the future. And with that, I can open it up for questions if that's okay. And I will say thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
I have one comment to make. Medicare, I know that nobody around here is in it outside of a couple of us, but they've been real proactive on the seeing your doctor. They have all kinds of incentives for doing it. I have United Health Plan too. And do they have a tier on their drugs? You had zero copay for drugs. Do they have tier 1, tier 2? Is there difference?
So with the HSA compatible plan, they all go towards deductible and then your co-insurance. So they're covered at 100% after your deductible has been met. But they do have a routine preventative maintenance drug list where you're able to get a list of drugs that are free. So there's some blood pressure medication, cholesterol medication, things like that that are on that list to save dollars out of the employee's pocket, as well as to save the city and utilities dollars moving forward.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Probably should clarify to you that the medical plan that is before you. When we first took a look at, our current plan, like Jamie had mentioned, it came in at 9.5, almost 10%, correct?
9.9%, correct.
So when we sat in that first meeting, we're just like, no. You know, that's not, we gotta figure something else out. So then Jamie's like, you want me to go out, and see what else is in the market? Yes, please. Let's take a look at that. And then UHC, United Healthcare, came back, with their current, plan offer. And when we kind of look at, if you remember last year, with Robin, we had 3 health plan choices. We had, a lesser group of doctors that you could go to, so your group of doctors was smaller and you didn't have any out of pocket. And then we had a middle one where you had 4% and then you uppaid for the healthier broad plan. So when Jamie came forth with UHC and it was actually, when I look at all the plans and the people that are in it, we would be able to budget at a steady straight 0% across the board for health insurance is what, the department heads were given for 2025. With that being said, and Jamie said, we're getting a better plan. UHC has more doctors in your group, even the broad plan that was cost the employees more money. This is a better plan. There's more doctors available. So the choice was, because the IRS had stepped in and had $200 extra deductible for the single side, an extra $400 on the family side. Okay, so we're saving, I think it was double digits, on the 3,200, 6,400 plan. So what made up the difference is give back to the employees the additional dollar so their plan will be level. Again, seeing a better plan, and everyone across the board would go back to 4%. We did have some employees last year because the plan, was cheaper, but this plan is cheaper. We're gonna go across the board. The proposal is to charge the employees again back at 4%, everyone. And then there is the higher deductible plan, that is a choice for employees, and there is a large saving. And I guess the way we look at that is there is a larger savings to the city, for those plans. So we increase the deductible to have a little carrot out there for those individuals. And sometimes those are your younger male, employees who, hopefully we can get them into their PCP, which doesn't cost them anything. But then they can get some more dollars and start saving money over time, because the money that would be put into those, would be $2,700 for a single and $5,400 for a family. So if they're thinking they're one of those individuals and they want to take the chance or, you know, make that decision, depending on what their makeup of their family is, they would have that option. But again, the employees will have an option, and the 3,200, 6,400 option is very similar to what most employees have today. And about the same out of pocket as last year, and a bigger plan. Now, Jamie did go back to Robin. I said, ask them if they're gonna need, you know, ask the question. Okay, we're at this with United Healthcare, because I'm not gonna go without telling you how much work this is to change carrier. So in our office, Stephanie's going through lots of statistical data, information that has to be shared with UHC. So this is, you know, get yourself moving. These are the priorities right now, is to get our employees to UHC. Why this is in front of you tonight is because now we have 3 weeks in order to get all this data put together and try to make this as seamless as possible, for our employees, if you choose to make the change. But Robin did not, they came back with a 0% increase. I thought it would be 0 in the broad plan and then negative, but that's not what came across. So it didn't make any sense. We were saving money. Why would we go, and it's a better plan, why would we go back to Robin, although it's easier for us, but now we just have to work harder, and it's actually a better plan for our employees. So in our office, it will take us more work to get through this, but at the end of the day, we felt that that was worth it for our employees. So you will also see then the special council meeting tonight that this is one of the items on that agenda, and part of that is because we have such a short turnaround here. You do not have to make a decision to go with this. It's entirely on, you know, what you guys want to do and what you're comfortable with. But it works better if we can move forward with this, because we have contracts that we have to sign and all those kind of things. And it is only 1 year, just so you know. So every year, this seems to be how we go move forward with health insurance is, you know, you go out to market, you ask your current carrier, and if that doesn't work out, hopefully you have other carriers that are going to bid on you. And that's a big, you never know that from year to year, either how that's all going to play out at the end of the day, until we get into September. So just to give you a little bit of background on that. But then I think we should just open it up for questions. Is there any other questions that you have about the plan? Chad has also been in all these meetings. I don't know if you have any additional comments that you would like to make about
Was just gonna
something I
reiterate-
missed.
Reiterate the point you mentioned 3 weeks, because our plan renews October 1st, not January 1st. So that's why we're looking at this now. So we have 3 weeks to kind of get our plan renewed. So that's why the timing for things.
I would love to go year to year and not have to pay an insurance premium up more. So I think it's a great deal. I've never seen it, so.
Just kind of throw, what's the support for our proposal to do the incentivize for going to your PCP? We're saying that, okay, employees, over this next year in 2025, we want you to go see your doctor. And if you do that, you get that additional $500. Do you guys support that? I want to make sure that you guys are supportive of our initiative of incentivizing that.
I'm not against it, but I do have a question about it. What are they gonna be able to use that 500 for?
It would-
Because if they're not going to the doctors now, they're obviously just paying premiums and not doing anything health-wise. So you're gonna give them $500 for what? Towards their deductible that they're not using anyway? What is it used for?
It's part of the $1,700 or the $3,400 as their contribution to their HSA. So correct me if I'm wrong, Judy and Jamie, but if someone doesn't go to their doctor in 2025, then in 2026, this number would be 1,200.
Correct. So since it is an HSA contribution, those dollars could be used for any qualified medical expense as deemed by the IRS publication 502, which is a very expansive list.
We already put the money in our HSA account. We're just proposing to keep 500 out if they don't go to the doctor.
Okay, I understand all that. I'm just saying that if it's $1,700 that they're not using anyway, or $1,200 that they're not using anyway.
They probably are using it.
They probably are using it, and then where that comes into fruition too, is that they can use that HSA to essentially become a 401k for their healthcare expenses down the road, because that is a triple tax advantage account. Which
Okay.
is very beneficial for each individual employee moving into retirement, ultimately knowing that we're all going to have healthcare expenses down the road. And there are huge advantages to having those dollars in their HSA build up year after year on a tax-free
It does
basis.
roll over.
Oh,
Okay.
yes.
Okay,
yes.
okay, then I just wanted to know, HSAs that I've been involved in, and I know it's gonna change this year for me. It's year by year, and if you don't use it, you lose it. So if you're not going to the doctor or doing something with that HSA fund, it was money I didn't have.
And I think that maybe you're thinking of a flexible spending account, because the flexible spending account is use it or lose it, whereas an HSA rolls over from year to year. It's the employee's account, it's portable, it goes with them. Those are their dollars that continue to grow year after
Okay.
year on a tax-free basis. So it's a very beneficial account for those employees to have in place.
And their wellness checkup doesn't cost them anything either, does it?
No,
So that's an incentive right there.
correct.
I'm sure you work with other municipalities. Is the 500 pretty standard?
500 has been the number that's it's been statistically shown to move the needle as far as getting employees engaged to going in for their routine preventative care. Yes.
So again, like Judy mentioned, once we hit the city council meeting in a little while, this will be on the agenda for consideration. If you guys need more time, you can talk about tabling it. But again, we do have a timeline clock ticking. That's why we had a council meeting set up for tonight for the other item. So we thought, oh, it'd be a great opportunity to bring it back on to see if we can continue our process going. But again, you just heard about this tonight. We want to make sure you have enough time to digest it, but it is a good plan. I mean, it is, we're coming forward to the council with an option that our coverage actually improves and our premiums go down. Hopefully we can do that every year, but we'll see what happens.
Anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to. Oh, let's see. To accept the health insurance presentation and approval of the 2025 plan as presented.
I'll second that.
Motion's been made by John, seconded by Bob. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions for Jamie? Otherwise, we'll probably let her go for the council meeting.
Thank you.
All right, move on to discussion of personal property and manufacturing assessment. Adam?
I did provide a bunch of state reports in your packet, but I'm also gonna pass down some of my bullet points too that I made. We just want to take one and pass it to you, right? So we're at the time now where the state is releasing our assessment numbers before the budget process. I see some new faces, so one of the couple of things that I'm gonna be talking about, net new construction, manufacturing, equalized values, and then Act 12 personal property. A lot of this is going to feed into what our aggregate assessment is, which then feeds into what the tax rate is going to be for you to be able to flex what the city and districts need for their budgets. So net new construction is an important number. When I'm doing assessments, we have to categorize all changes that we make. And net new construction is important because it affects your levy limits, and it's also used in the expenditure restraint program. These values are equalized. So if you're familiar, backing up a little bit, local assessments, we don't chase the market every year. We had a revaluation done in 2016 and 17, and that assessment model that was created back then is still being used today until we do the next revaluation. So the market's always changing and the state is always looking at where our assessment is versus sales, and they come up with the assessment ratio. So when I send in the numbers, I'm sending in our assessed values, they apply the ratio to that, and you're getting an estimate of market value of new construction when it comes. Breaking it down, we had about 9.6 million in new construction that came out like 1.6% of the overall aggregate. Outagamie, that was about 2.3 million, and the Outagamie side, Wapaka, 7.2 million. Breaking that down even further, residential increased 3 million. That was primarily new homes in the townhomes, twindos that are being built by the high school, and some new residential lots that came in with the apartments. Commercial went up when net new construction was 5 million, just over 5 million. That primarily included the new bank headquarters and the new apartments. And then manufacturing increased for net new construction, 1.5 million, and that was primarily Titan Industries. Looking at the TIDs, I have a question mark on one of these points. TID 4, which includes the apartments and the residential lots that were included in that development. TID 4 saw an increase of 3.8 million. TID 5, which is the First State Bank TID, that went up 1.8 million. And TID 6, I'm still working on. Right now, the report says minus 10,000, and where that minus 10,000 is coming from is a correction the state applied to assessment in 2023. The other thing I should note is for the people that haven't heard me talk before, as your assessor, I'm considered the local assessor. I'm in charge of the residential, commercial, and vacant land assessments. Manufacturing assessments are determined by a state office. So those numbers, the guy working on Titan, I actually spoke to him today, and he confirmed that in the 9.6 million, the Titan net new construction is included in that. But when I told him that TID 6 was showing a -10, he was a little concerned about where his change to Titan Industries went. I've talked to a few other offices and didn't get a clean answer. So I don't know if I might have to contact you, Judy, to get a name from somebody at LGS, because the offices I'm contacting, I'm not making any headway, and it's been like 2 weeks talking to people now. But TID 6, I confirmed, it does include Titan. It's marked on the county website. Manufacturing has it in the TID 6. So I don't know. I think it's something at the equalization office. There's some new people that have started there. There's been a lot of turnover at the state. And when I started pointing out to this, it seemed like some wheels started turning on what happened with their reporting. So I'm thinking TID 6 TID value should be going up to, 1.5 million minus that 10,000 off of it. But still working on it. It has been assessed. I know last January you asked me to make sure if it's Titan has been, you can see the change there. I just haven't figured out why it didn't trickle through to our net new construction number. But these were, we had a lot of activity with the bank. So these are significantly higher over years past. Usually, total net new construction is averaging probably around 2.5 to 3.5 million. So we pretty much tripled it with the apartments, the banks all coming in at the same time. So flipping over this sheet, actually you can scroll down now. So what's up there, what I'll show, that's the official state document that shows the same 9.6 million over there. So you can see that right from the state report. If you scroll down to the next page, here's where they're indicating the TIDs, and my red flag is that minus 10,000 over here. So, this is coming straight from the state. This is what I created this file. That's coming straight from the state. So this report's a little hard to read. This is something that I work on for Judy. And now I'm moving on to manufacturing equated values. So kind of getting back, I kind of explained there's two offices. A state office does manufacturing. I do local assessments that are non-manufacturing. We assess differently too. The process is different. So before I explain to you, our model is based on 2017 data because that was the last revaluation. We don't change that model until we have the next revaluation. So even the assessments I'm creating today, they're still based on sales data going back to 2017. They're creating that, the state's creating that assessment ratio to try to analyze where our assessments are at versus where the market's really at. When we talk about manufacturing assessments, they do the opposite. So every year they're charged with redoing all the manufacturing values based on the current market. So this year talking to them, they applied 2% appreciation and they do it regionally. So they're not just doing it to New London. They're looking at a region of Wisconsin, and all manufacturing properties in there are getting a market adjustment. And what they determined this year was about 1.5 to 2% to most properties within that, they increased. The flip side of that is residential sales are going up, which then, and remember, our assessments are staying flat and sales are continuing to go up. So our ratio on the local side is going down. What we then have to do is apply that same ratio to manufacturing full values so they're assessed equitably to the local assessments. Because the appreciation is only going up 1 or 2% on the actual manufacturing assessments. Yet our ratio is dropping by anywhere from 6 to 10% based on residential properties. What ends up happening is you end up with less equated manufacturing value than you did the year before. Now is the time I'm gonna get up.
You got a red dot over here.
You have a?
Yep. It was right in front of you.
I don't know if I'm good at it aim, though. Let's see. So,
Here, I'll go back.
there we go.
Is that what you want?
Yes, right here. So this side's 2023. All our classes are broken out. Residential, you can see the number here, commercial, manufacturing. This number is the equated number. What they really assessed manufacturing with real estate at in 2023, the full value was 46 million. Okay, but because, whoops, sorry. What button is that?
Just the left and right.
I'm sorry.
I'm just on a roll.
So you see in this 46 here, that's what they're saying the market value of manufacturing properties in the whole city are. When you look at our residential and commercial assessments, again, those aren't sales numbers, those are assessed numbers. When they compare this total, the total residential to residential sales, when they look at commercial and compare that to commercial sales, they came up with an average assessment ratio broken out by county of about 75%. Okay, so what we do then is we take this full value, with the 75%, and that's actually what manufacturing gets taxed. Okay, you can see this continues to go down with, and they don't apply appreciation and no new construction, continue to go down. Moving on to this year, I'm estimating the ratio coming in at 62%, which is quite a jump. That's quite a jump, going from 75 to 62. I don't know if some of you might have been on the board about 4 years ago, I might remember this. I had come in here, it was right after COVID had started and when sales really started picking up. My prior experience with the assessment ratio was that the state would only move it, they're conservative, 2 to 4%. I could make an argument usually for them to be more aggressive, and that was probably up until 2019. Well, when COVID came in, they started moving the needle quicker, and I didn't realize that's what they were gonna do. So I came in here with similar data that I'm seeing today in estimating the ratio, and I said to Judy and some of you guys that were on the board there, they're not gonna move it 10%. I've only seen them do it in slow increments. So I estimated at that time a smaller change. And what ended up happening is they did move it. So Judy, I had to scramble at the last minute and redo her budget because you're gonna end up with less money than she was expecting. Because again, I was saying the ratio was higher than what it actually was. So this time, showing you this report, my caveat would be is I'm being aggressive with that 62%, trying to shoot the worst case scenario and then have it come in better rather than vice versa. So when you do that and you estimate it at 62%, even with the net new construction I talked about, the 2% that the state applied for appreciation, the final manufacturing assessed value ends up at that 30.8. Whoops. There we go. It's 38 here. Overall, we're roughly about the same. Okay. Do you guys have any question about that? Is that making sense? So I guess the point for this is over time, because residential is appreciating faster than commercial or faster than manufacturing, each year that continues to happen. When you're looking at the tax burden distribution, manufacturing as a category is just responsibilities getting more and more burdens going on the other properties. So that's an incentive to do a revaluation. So when you do a revaluation, I am now trying to assess all the properties at their sale value you'll see the ratio go up to 100%, or maybe even a little higher. Sometimes it comes in at 101%, or somewhere in that range, and then you'd be applying the that ratio to the full value. The other interesting thing here too is, so here, you know, we were at 46, it went up to 49, but that's all we get the tax on. 30.8. This is one thing I always harp on, Judy, so she asked me to come to Schwartz. So what I'm basing that statistics on is kind of all written on the bottom here. That's the state sales analysis. So by county, the mean aggregate median ratio. So they take all sales that happen, analyze them against our assessment, and then kind of do a bell curve on them to come up with these statistics. The next box, economic change, that comes in a different report, and on there, they did 11% in Outagamie, 15% in Wapaka, for a total of 14. So taking, you know, that's saying that that's an estimate of what the economic change was. That's what we appreciation. So we would deduct that from the prior year ratio, which again puts me in the 64 to 60 range. So realistically, I could see it coming in closer to 65, maybe, but because our aggregate ratio, the one I highlighted green, which I think they pay attention to the most, is at 62. That's why I went with 62%, and it's kind of the worst case scenario. So it's not worst case scenario that it's a bad situation for this year, just that in a few weeks when the final equated report comes out, I anticipated a little higher numbers than this rather than so. But the other important thing on here too, which I'm going to talk about next, is the big blanks area right here where it says minus 100%. So again, we've talked about this a couple of times. This is personal property. This is what we got last year in personal property. It's now exempt, so that's gone. And that's what we're going to talk about next, is there is supposed to be state aid for that. So you can scroll to the next one.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, when you have this kind of reduction in the manufacturing that kind of eats away at the increase in the residential, you, even without a tax increase, you're gonna see those residential bills go up.
Right, so well, yes, right, it would go up. If we kept everything the same as last year budget wise, same tax rate, same everything, but we use this year's,
That's
my estimate, manufacturing would be contributing less to your budget, residential would be contributing more, so without any changes, residential would still go up in taxes and manufacturing would go down.
That's
Without
kinda
any
what I
changes.
wanted to hit home about.
On the
because,
budgets.
Yeah, that's what happened that year, where we estimated and then I came in and I assumed one thing and then it.
Yeah, I think
flipped on me and I was like, oh, that's why he's here, because I was like, oh.
I
we
think
have that situation happening again.
I
so-
kind of went back and looked at it. We were sitting at, I think, 95%. And the reports were indicating that we might drop down to like 84%. And I never experienced an 11% change in 15 years. They always seem to be coming up with similar numbers because they are not just looking at the city of New London, they look at sales regionally. So they get more data than what I'm looking at to come up with this ratio. So it always seemed like they were conservative with that. So I ended up,
Appreciation.
so I think I ended up estimating instead of 84, I said like 89 or 90%, and they came in with the 84 ratio, which then really dropped market manufacturing numbers down, which then all your estimates of revenue and what were all off, and we had to do a kind of a scramble. I think it was 2020 scramble at the end to redo the budget. But for your guys' perspective, just, you know, understand that the ratio does impact manufacturing and then also the tax burden amongst the types of asset classes that are paying. So it's the justification is that the state manufacturing office, you know, they're working the whole state. They don't know, they can't reasonably know where we're at with our models, so they have to always do it in full value and then back it down to our models. so. But then the other piece, and now I'm going back to the sheet I passed around, those of you that have heard me talk before, this has kind of been big news in my world. Act 12 personal property. Prior to January 1st, 2024, personal property was assessed and taxed. What personal property was business assets that were non-real estate used for income purposes. So if you had a insurance office, all the desks, computers, office supplies, they had to report that, the value of those assets to me, and then they were taxed on that. So starting January 1st, 2024, that was exempted. They've kind of been whittling down that tax for 30 years. And part of that process was they said they being the state would provide state aid for that loss. Removing that exemption, they're going to give you state aid back. When we got all the documents, and of course they went over what was budgeted. There wasn't enough budgeted to cover what the 2023 personal property collections were for the state. So they had to do a payment factor of 99.9%. So they were a little off on the budgeting factor. So that would reduce, what we're getting, what we get this year versus what we got in 2023. So going down just some of the numbers, these are the numbers I reported. I just wanted to make sure that someone saw these. We had to report our 2023 numbers to them, and then they based that on what we were going to get back in state aid. So in 2023, in non-TID areas, we had about 3.6 million in personal property, and then in TID 5, we had about 100,000 personal property in there. Outagamie side, it was about 500,000 in non-TID. So then below that, we got all our letters of the calculation, which is included in your packet, providing 2025 estimates. So, we're getting about should be getting about 80,000 in state aid in reference to the Act 12 exemption of personal property. As I mentioned, they have tried to whittle this down over the years. So there's a prior exemption of just a specific asset class, machinery, tools, and patterns from 2017. That also, when they removed that asset class, they started giving state aid. So that one has been an existing revenue that you've been getting. And that came in again at around 12,739. So now, the only thing I'd like to point out is personal property was not shared, right? So that was an expense you get and you don't have to share with the districts, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. So I believe when you're trying to audit these numbers, only use the municipal tax rate. So it works out using the municipal tax rate, not the full rate overall. So not the big county school. So other than that, it's still, our ratio is low, coming in at 62%. That means we're on the pace to have a revaluation.
Is that next year?
We actually have it scheduled for next year. And I have emails out to Chad to talk about that process further. So.
And that's the manufacturing revaluation?
No, so what happens is since manufacturing is always assessed at full value, they're never have to be revalued. They're revalued every year, basically. What happens is I'll go through a revaluation and update all the assessments for commercial, vacant land, and residential back to market value. What that'll cause is the local level of assessment to go back to 100% of market value. And then that 100% ratio is applied to manufacturing's full values. So then we're capturing 100% of it. So instead of capturing the 62% of manufacturing full values after revaluation, capturing 100% of that.
So they're catching up a little bit in a sense?
No, we're falling behind because the appreciation they're doing is much lower than the appreciation that's happening in residential. I bring up residential because that's the biggest data set, right? Most sales in our bucket, and that's the primary driver of our ratios, residential sales. They do look at all sales. Commercial actually is a little closer to market value than residential when you look at it specifically, but because the volume of residential sales tend to drive the ratio closer to the residential rate rather than commercial. So residential jumping 10%, manufacturing only going up 1 or 2%. You're looking at 9 to 8% loss year over year. That continues to happen out of the total bucket of what's available for manufacturing. That making sense?
So when you do your assessment, some of the communities around here have just done a reassessment.
Yep.
And it went through the roof. And they claim because of the sales of properties in the area, what's that gonna do to a tax bill for the average person?
Okay, so best I can do, but answer is just to give you an example, because I just went through a revaluation too, and I was in the Village of Denmark. Okay. A revaluation, changes for revaluation are not proportionate in tax dollars. So if your assessment goes up 50%, your tax bill isn't gonna go up another 150% as well. What really happens, and it kind of gets into this, we would be by doing a revaluation, we'd be increasing our aggregate assessment to market value, right? You have limits on what you can do with your budget, right? So that's not gonna jump the same amount that the assessments went up. And it's simple math of determining the mill rate between what you need to collect for a budget, what you have for aggregate assessment to come up with the mill rate to collect that. So what happens during revaluations, your aggregate jumps, your budget's flat, your tax rate goes down, generally. It depends on what the city does, but generally it goes down. So my example is in the Village of Denmark, I did them for, they were done for 2023. And they were similar ratio to you. So what I found looking at my sales, and again, it's mostly residential, so I'm gonna focus on residential. But the newer homes, and I characterize newer homes as 2000 or newer. When I looked at sales, they appreciated faster than say the 1960s to 1980s ranch homes. And similar, the 1970s, 60s to 80s ranch homes, one-story homes appreciated faster than the 1900 homes. So when I got all the different market segments to match up to market value, the newer homes on average went up by 72%. That middle group went up about 60%, and the 1900s homes went up 50%. Because they all went up different, what that meant was we were pushing tax burden to new construction. So most new construction individuals saw about a $400 to $500 increase in their taxes. This 1960s to 1980s homes stayed flat. Most that I looked at were either really close to their previous bill or about $50 higher. And the 1900 homes actually went down ever so slightly. Most of those owners probably considered it more staying the same, but it did technically go down on the 1900 homes. So what happens is it's all relative to what the market is doing for your particular home. The other thing that can impact your tax bill though is if you had a whole bunch like unpermitted work that we weren't aware of, and now we're capturing that. Maybe you remodeled your house, or if we have to correct data about your house. If we're doing corrections to the physical data that we're collecting off that property, you're probably going to go up in taxes no matter what. It's going to cause a bigger change. But no, you shouldn't see taxes explode, but you might see them redistributed based on where the appreciation happened. More so or less so.
Because a lot of people are seeing a little sticker shock.
Yeah.
When they're getting assessed.
Yes.
It's like,
yeah. So my big disclaimer when I send that out is my own brother did it too when Green Bay did theirs. He's calling me. He's like, my taxes are gonna triple. They just doubled my assessment. I'm like, no, calm down. So I usually put a big disclaimer on there that an increase in revaluation is not proportionate to your tax bill. What the revaluation is doing is updating the assessment to better reflect market data, improve accuracy, but then also go through the distribution to make sure that's accurate as well. So what happens is if you do experience an increase, that meant someone is paying less. So it's not that new money's coming to the city through a revaluation. It's just redistributing what the budget is.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
and if you're in a particular property that is considered desirable now, so, look at new construction. The last revaluation in Denmark, they were selling 3-bedroom, 2-bath, brand new homes with 2-car garage for 179 to 180. Right now, that same home is listed at 450. And not new. 10 years old now too. So that's what I had to do to those. So that's what those people saw, was it a change from like 180 to 460, but their tax bill increase was only about $600. So did I answer your question?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, but it just.
I can breathe, John.
So their taxes, it's really interesting. They were like, 'cause we've never seen numbers explode like this, right? So, and again, don't compare them to your tax rate. Cities are different than villages. I really shouldn't be saying this here, but they were at about $24 per thousand before the revaluation. After the revaluation overall, so school, county, state, they dropped to $12 per thousand. And when you look at their local rate, so the municipal rate, that's more comparable to what I normally see townships doing than villages doing. So their finance guy was really happy. with the revaluation. So the development agreements, they're just trading it from one pocket to the other. Is it going to be on the tax bill, or am I paying the city a different?
Right.
They weren't as happy of it to their tax bill. So, does anybody have any questions with this stuff, Judy?
I think we'll have to get together, don't we?
Yeah, the big thing right now that I still question mark is making sure TID 6 net new construction is accounted for. And I'm always checking net new construction overall, and it's changed. So I know at one time your levy limit was like increase it by 2% or your net new construction, but I know it's different. So
Just net new construction here.
it's just net new construction.
Correct. But this is the biggest one. I think it'll be about 50.
Yeah.
Thank goodness health insurance did.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Moving on to set budget
Appreciate
date.
your time. Have a good evening. All right. Sorry.
It's okay. Set the budget date, Judy.
Yep. So originally I was looking at October 23rd, and I'm not sure that's what got printed, but Tuesday, October 22nd at 5:15 is what I'm proposing tonight for the budget presentation. And the reason that I would like to do that is there's a number of publications that we have to have in the paper for 15 days prior to the council meeting. And once we get to November, we start getting really tight with Thanksgiving time and hunting time. And so what this allows us to do is if we go ahead and have that presentation done on the 22nd, we can keep all of November's meetings the same in December and just keep moving forward in those months, and we won't have to try to do something special when we start to get around the holiday time. And again, that gives me time to look at those publications in the paper, to comply with the state statute for that. So if that works for everyone, we can just mark that on our calendars and I don't know if you send out invites, it'll be on the calendar that is put together in our office, so that works for everyone. Move forward with that. All right.
On the finance director's report.
All right, so I'll just go high level, and there isn't a lot of changes. The one thing I did notice on the expenditure report, before I came in and I was looking through things, this is July, actually not June. I do have the 7 here, I did calculate this right, so that should not have been June. But everything on this expenditure side is still looking good. The insurance is just that we're waiting for some reimbursements to come in. I just take a look at that one. And we're still waiting for about $50,000. So right now we have about 10,000 within this budget. But there are some things that will be charged there yet, but that that will come into more normal dollars probably next August or September. Again, and with the replacement equipment replacements, we expected this to be over 800,000. We are using some designated funds for that. Debt service is almost paid in full. So I don't see anything out of the ordinary on the expenditure side unless somebody has something specific about that. Otherwise, I will move on to the expenditure or the revenues, I'm sorry. And the revenues. Right now, again, these are looking really good. We have collected more interest than we budgeted already here in July. So those will be some dollars to talk about in February about where we could use those. You can see intergovernmental and grants. The negative actually here on the revenue side is a good thing. And then here in licensing and permits, this is our construction permits, heating, electricity, construction. We're already $17,000 over, and we expect that to probably double or triple by the end of the year. So just a lot of good things on the revenue side, and I don't expect any of these not to come in at 100% by the end of the year. So any questions on any of those? Which one a little bit? And then we have assigned and unassigned fund balance. And nothing has really changed here, but here are some of those, that list of things that are getting charged in that account, of which we have money put aside for. And then just one of the things I will note since Adam was here is that I do have, or the city does have right here, revaluation reserve $71,000. So it sounds like we'll be making the decision if we'll be moving forward, just so you know, we do have some dollars put aside. So that won't be up against anything. Maybe very few dollars in the capital budget, but that won't be a pressure within that budget. Those have already been set aside for that purpose. And then we have the wheel tax budget. We did spend some of those dollars. We have 69,000. We spent 61 on the house Alcon Engineering. So we still have about 7,500. There is a fund balance of, along with this fund balance, we have about $140,000. Still looking at some other potential projects in North Street for sure, since we received that grant through Wapaka County. And then our bonding schedule, we have about 1,024,000. $500,000 is the libraries. And then the other share of this is this house Alcon Liberty Roads that are going to be completed, and then the rest will be downtown. So we're doing the rundown on those dollars. That's already been spent. And then I have some things that I completed in August. I know it looks like a little, but there's been a lot going on, so. April and I finalized the budget and we got those packets out. I had all the insurance information that I had to get out, along with the utility and the payroll estimates for workers' compensation premiums. Chad, I, and Jay spent a lot of time on health insurance renewal. Another thing we've been looking at that we spent a lot of time in actually in August is some payroll efficiencies. We're just looking at how to possibly get some of that payroll done a little bit more efficient in our office. So we're looking at alternatives to that. So a lot of meetings on that. Working with department heads on the 25. This sounds like a broken record, but it's about my line share of time will be done over the next 2 months is working on that 25 budget. I did spend some time on that 23 audit that we finished last month. I made some mid-year adjustments to our financial statements, and then so we spent, as you know, tonight we had our TID meeting, so we've been spending quite a bit of time looking at TID 7 and then the amendment that was done to TID 5. So that is that. Any questions for me?
For a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Made by Mike, seconded by Bob. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?